Hi everyone, welcome to Module 9. Well done for making it this far. The topic for Module 9 is called a feeling of freedom. The word freedom in the dictionary is defined as the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants. But what does it take for us to feel free? There's a famous quote that says, "Freedom is being you without anyone's permission." Imagine how wonderful it would feel to no longer seek validation from others. Imagine freedom from doubt, limiting beliefs, negative self-talk, and self-destructive habits. It sounds good, right? We're living in the time of the self-love revolution, but we have trouble committing to it. We were never taught self-love in school, and most of us didn't learn about self-love at home. If you did, you were one of the lucky ones. Women have been sacrificing their time, values, beliefs, and self-care to put others first for thousands of years. We learned to put others first. We learned the importance of success. And we learned to work hard and make money. But we didn't learn how to keep ourselves feeling fueled for that journey. There's a certain type of magic that comes with loving yourself. Have you ever heard of the saying, "You can't pour from an empty cup"? Self-love is our fuel. It's the foundation of who we are. Everything builds on top of this foundation, and if it isn't solid, it feels shaky. For those of us who've experienced the power of self-love, we can agree that the effects can often feel quite magical. The moment we start loving ourselves, we experience positive shifts in our lives. Life begins to move forward with more ease, and things begin magically falling into place. Our relationships improve, our health improves, and life begins to feel really good. So, what is actually holding us back from loving ourselves? There are many things that could be holding us back from that self-love state. Maybe because we weren't taught how to do it, we simply don't know how. We may not know where to begin or how to keep the momentum flowing once we do. We may not feel like we measure up or that we're smart enough, funny enough, or beautiful enough. Sometimes we get stuck in the past, thinking of our past mistakes and beating ourselves up over something that happened yesterday or years ago. The voice inside our head may be saying mean things to us. Negative self-talk can really bring us down. Comparing our bodies, financial situation, job titles, and talents to others can be soul-destroying. And each time we focus on the bad, it makes it more and more difficult to love ourselves. So how do we move past all of this and free ourselves from this self-destructive cage? Whenever we learn a new skill, the foundations are always the best place to start. Self-love has many pillars, and it's not just as simple as saying, "I love myself," and you're there. Self-love can also be referred to as self-compassion. It involves taking care of your own needs, accepting your weaknesses and failures, as well as understanding your strengths and staying in touch with your emotions. Self-love can sometimes come across as being selfish. Many people think that if you focus on yourself and you love yourself first, then you don't love others, or you are depriving others of the love that you could be giving to them. You may come across as defensive, elusive, and seem like you don't care about them. This is why self-awareness and clear communication are vital. Remember, caring for others is important, but it shouldn't come at the expense of your own well-being. We've mentioned self-awareness in many of our previous lessons, and as we can see from this image, The foundation of self love consists of many different aspects, all of which require some degree of self awareness. The focus on mental health has become more accepted in recent years. Previously, when someone said that they were anxious or depressed, it used to be shrugged off and we were told to just deal with it or get over it. Mental health was a taboo subject that some even considered to be a myth. It was often seen as a sign of weakness or something that we can just snap out of. Thankfully, we're learning more about mental health and it's becoming a topic that's more widely discussed. These days, it's not something that we only try to fix once it's broken. If you suffer from a depressive disorder or not, we can all benefit from practicing self awareness. We've previously discussed tools like journaling, pie check ins, where you name your one word for your physical, intellectual, and emotional state daily. You can also use tools like meditation and more. With self awareness, we can recognize our triggers and get to know ourselves well enough to know what we need to cope better and how to manage stressful situations in a healthy way. If you feel like you can't deal with your mental health on your own, there are free or at least affordable counseling options available. The second pillar in our foundation is self acceptance. You are worthy of love, just as you are. You are enough. Self acceptance is accepting that you don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love. You don't have to make a square fit into a triangle. Marissa Peer's famous talk, I Am Enough, has become a worldwide movement. In the video, she encouraged people to write the words I am enough on mirrors around our homes. And since then, she's received an influx of emails, messages, and social media tags with these powerful words. People are writing them on car windows, on beach sand, sticky notes, mirrors in their homes, and more. She reminds us that we are enough, just as we are. Please see the link to this inspiring video in the video description. The next pillar in our foundation that I would like to talk about is healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries can help us define our individuality and draw a line with what we will and will not hold ourselves responsible for. There are 5 main types of boundaries that we need to be aware of. The first being a physical boundary. This is your body, your personal space, or your privacy. For example, you may not be comfortable with public displays of affection, but you find yourself with a partner who is keen to kiss in public and do all those things, and it leaves you feeling uncomfortable. You need to let them know. This is where how we set a healthy physical boundary of what we find is acceptable or not. An emotional boundary is what you are and what you're not willing to share with others. This could also be when you're stressed or upset and you're not looking for advice, but rather seeking to vent. You can communicate this by saying, I'm not looking for advice, I just need someone to listen. This is setting a good emotional boundary where someone isn't going to try and give you advice that isn't wanted. We also have a material boundary. This is like material possessions, such as money or things that you own. If someone borrows something from you, you can set a clear boundary. If you break it, you need to replace it. Or, I want it back in a week. That way, when you do request they replace an item or have something for longer than intended, that they're not surprised by your request. The next is a sexual boundary. What we are willing to or not willing to do sexually. This is your body, and you know what feels good and what doesn't. If you're ever in a situation where you feel uncomfortable, it's important to set a boundary. This also applies to sexual comments or advances. Time is another boundary. An example of a time boundary is if someone is late and doesn't communicate that they are going to be late, you could request that in the future, if they're running late, to let you know. This could also be applied to task management at work. Do you have enough time to complete a project or the workload that you've been given? If you are feeling time pressures, it's important to say and communicate these clearly and calmly. There are more boundaries than the ones that I've mentioned here, such as spiritual, financial, intellectual, and more. But the key to setting all these boundaries is communication. Remember our lessons on courageous conversations? Use those tips to communicate your boundaries effectively. Take time for self-care. Remember to feed your soul with your hobbies and your interests. Even if we need to schedule in some me time into our calendars to get it done, it is totally worth it. Self-care is making the time to rest when needed, eating healthy food, and doing things that feed your soul. It can also be setting those boundaries that we discussed, asking for help and asking for what you need. The next is our inner voice and reining it in. Would you speak to your best friend the way that you speak to yourself about yourself? It's important to speak to yourself with loving words and words of encouragement. Next time you catch yourself with a negative thought, ask yourself, would I be friends with someone who speaks to me that way? We can counter that negative self-talk by naming 3 things that we love about ourselves every time we catch ourselves in a negative thought. Okay, we've reached our last foundation, which is self-discovery. This is much like self-awareness, but we're adding in some extra curiosity for pizzazz. It's getting to know ourselves fully, understanding our likes, and developing a curiosity for things that we enjoy. Setting achievable goals to build on these interests, it gives us a sense of direction and pride. When we put time into things that we enjoy, we gain more depth and love for ourselves. For some, it may mean going to therapy or going to the gym or investing in a life coach. For others, it may be meditation or even learning a new skill. In our lesson, the challenge is the way we discussed a problem-solving technique that's called the 5 whys. This is a great technique that you can use to get to the root of different aspects of yourself. I use the 5 whys often when I want to understand my behaviors or reactions in certain situations. It begins with self-awareness, recognizing the thought, reaction, or feeling, and then asking why. Remember, your answers need to be grounded in fact in order for the 5 whys technique to work. So, why was I late for work? Because I didn't set my alarm. Why didn't I set my alarm? Because I went to bed late and I was watching a series. Why did I do that? Because I haven't been making enough time for myself and I decided that I would stay up late rather to make the time for myself. Why haven't I been making time for myself? Because I have been too concerned about other people and making sure that their needs are met before mine. Why am I doing that? So this 5 whys technique can take us all the way down to root of the problem, and it helps us discover different parts of ourselves, and often the answer is more surprising than what we think. Self-love is a constant choice. It's not a magical feeling that appears to you one day. It's a commitment to your boundaries, your well-being, your mental and emotional health, and your body. I really love this quote on self love, and I think it beautifully sums up our foundations. Now that we understand the foundations, we can begin to put self love into practice. So, what can we do to begin loving ourselves today? The good news is that self love is within our reach and we can achieve it. Let's start off by talking about comparison. I've discovered that there is an infinite number of categories upon which we can compare ourselves, and almost an infinite number of people that we can compare ourselves to. And with how flooded we are by social media, it's easier than ever to constantly find someone better to compare ourselves to, which only really serves to make us feel bad about ourselves and robbing us of self love. Once we begin down that road, it will never end unless we take action. The tendency to compare ourselves to others is as human as any other emotion. Certainly, I'm not alone in my experience. But it's a decision that only steals joy from our lives. Using the foundation of self discovery can help us to get to know ourselves on a deeper level. It can help us embrace and appreciate our own uniqueness, and it shows us that we don't have to be like everyone else. I think it's time that we can spend to write down our successes, write down things that we're proud of about ourselves, and write down what makes us unique. The next step is accepting that some people just won't like you. I get it, rejection sucks. It's human nature to want to be understood and included by others. As a people pleaser myself, I used to find it incredibly difficult when someone didn't like me. I used to start to dissect my personality traits and try to make myself understand why I didn't measure up to them. And you know what? It's exhausting. Being disliked can be difficult, but in its own way, it's a gift. It helps us find our people and not get caught up in trying to make people who don't matter happy. When we find ourselves trying to be liked and constantly needing to prove our worth to someone who doesn't see it, the relationship can become toxic and rob us of self love and self compassion. Spending time with people who care about us boosts our self esteem and helps us feel more secure and confident within ourselves. Be you, and if others don't like it, they're not your people. Sis, it's time to forgive yourself. The impact of not forgiving others has proven to affect our physical, mental, and emotional well being. So, why not forgive ourselves? This is where the self compassion comes into play. Being human means that we all make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. We maybe made some bad choices in our past because we lacked the knowledge, foresight, time, or energy to make an informed or healthy choice. The old saying that hindsight is 2020 is so true. We can look back and think, wow, I shouldn't have made that choice or taken that path because of what happened. But it's important to remember that we don't have a crystal ball to tell the future. Sometimes we may have even made a decision because we were angry or confused or hurt at the time. Maybe the decision we made was self destructive, or we knew consciously or subconsciously that it would hurt another person. With a growth mindset, we can view these experiences as learning opportunities. What did I learn? How can I make better choices when a similar situation presents itself again? We should forgive but not forget the lessons that we learned. Forgiveness helps us take us out of the past and brings us to the present moment. Through life experiences, we evolve and we learn. So take a deep breath, say you're sorry to yourself, and focus on what you can do now to make better choices. This isn't an easy process and it can take time, but it's worth the feeling of freedom that comes with forgiving yourself. Making time for gratitude can improve our well being and our relationship with others. Gratitude is about acknowledging the good in one's life. It's not forced positivity or I should statements or even thinking that someone else has it worse. Living our life with gratitude helps us notice the small things like laughing with friends, a smile from a loved one, or even our public transport arriving on time. These small things all begin to link together and create a web of well being and positivity around us. Because after all, the small things end up being the big things in the end. There are a few things that we can do to make gratitude a habit. Start the day out right. We take a few minutes before we get out of bed to name 3 things that we're grateful for, no matter how simple they may seem. Write it down. We've mentioned the power of journaling and reflection in previous lessons, and that's because it really works. When we take the time to write down things that we're grateful for, it helps to solidify the thoughts and turn them into something visual. Practice observing. Notice the thank yous that you say throughout the day and don't forget to thank yourself too. Share your gratitude with others. Expressing gratitude can strengthen relationships and spreads positivity around us. When someone does something we appreciate, let them know. It makes them feel appreciated and seen. And in turn, it makes us feel good to be around. Slow down, sis. Life is full of pressures and responsibilities. We need energy to show up for ourselves and others. Rest is an essential part of the self love journey. Going to bed early because you feel exhausted and leaving the dishes for the next day is okay. If you feel like you don't have the energy to attend an event or some other social interaction and you need some time for yourself, that's okay too. Listening to your body and what it needs is essential to your physical, emotional, and mental well being. Slowing down can also mean taking a breath, eating slowly instead of rushing, or asking for some extra time to meet that deadline. A walk in nature or coffee at your favorite coffee shop can also help give you that boost that you need to keep going. Remember, it's your body, mind, soul, and you know what makes you feel recharged. So switch off the TV, put your phone on silent, pick up a book or your journal, or meditate to find your place of bliss. Self-love is an attainable and empowering journey. When we love ourselves, we can show up with more strength, confidence, and compassion. A few key takeaways from this session are taking care of your physical and mental health, practicing self-awareness and paying attention to our inner voice and understanding that you are enough, setting healthy boundaries, not comparing ourselves to others, forgiving ourselves and moving out of the past into the present moment, and taking time to rest. Thank you for making it through this self-love lesson. I hope that it has been as important for you as it was for me.